sound. Okay, I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Welcome everybody to today's Informative Friday presentation. Today's topic, one of my favorites, and as well as Rob's, understanding multi-tenant user security BODs with InforOS, FSM, HRTalent, and Infor Lawson. Join us for an overview of the multi-tenant user security BODs used to keep security in sync between InforOS, financial, supply chain management, HR, Talent, Birst, and Infor Lawson. Today's presenters will be Rob Velasco. He's our technology practice manager here at Bales, and I believe Jared Brock will be joining us as well. He's also one of our technology practice managers here at Bales. Before we get started, for those of you who don't know our background and who Bales is, we were founded in 1995 by Jamie Bales. We've been a partner of the Infor Lawson community since 1997. We strictly, we have a strict focus on the Infor Lawson human capital management, finance, and supply chain management offerings, including all the technology components within those suites. Our staff has about 15 plus years of consulting experience or experience with the product itself. We actually delivered the initial Cloud Suite trainings and programs for all for Infor and all the partners. And we recently, well, not recently, within the last year, we became part of the Nordic Consulting family. Today's session is being recorded, and the link to the recordings will be sent to all the registrants. If you're not registered but would like to receive the link, please email molly.velasco@balesllc.com to request that link. And again, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to Rob Velasco.
Thanks, Luke. Well, my name is Rob Velasco. I'm a technical practice manager here at Bales & Associates. I've been working with Bales & Associates since 1997, and I've been involved in most, if not all, things on the technical side back in the Lawson days and recently in the last 5 or 6 years on the multi-tenant Infor space. Jared is also on the call. He's another technical practice manager. He'll be helping monitor the chat and also answer questions. Jared, are you available for a quick intro? I know you had some work to do.
Yep. Hey, everybody. Jared Brock, been with the Bales family since about 2015. Like Rob, technical practice manager. I will be mostly out of the presentation, but I'll be watching the chat and trying to field any questions that I can. So thanks, Rob.
Great. Thanks, Jared. So let's jump in here to the presentation. So well, before we do, I'd like to read this disclaimer here. Just wanted to say that this material is in reference to the Infor V11 multi-tenant environment. This presentation is for informational purposes only, and we can make no warranties or guarantees of any kind based on this presentation alone. Reliance on this information presented without consultation is at your own risk. We highly recommend that you contact Bales to discuss how solutions can be tailored to your specific needs. So I just want to make sure we get that out there. Okay, kind of going to an overview here. So the agenda for today is for us to give a brief description of what we look to accomplish with this presentation. Then we're going to review a user security management scenario. Then we will move into the process that is behind that scenario, and finally end up with an example on how that data flows. And then before we get to questions, there are a few troubleshooting screens that we would like to review with everybody as well, and then into the questions and answers. So the overview. So the objective behind this presentation is to provide a high-level understanding of the user management process in the multi-tenant environment. The goal is to provide some insight into what is happening to the user security record when it gets updated in user management. There are a lot of different topics we can cover around user management, but in this presentation, we want to show how the security data flows from the user management application to the various other applications like GHR/FSM, as well as Birst. And for those who have hybrid environments, Lawson. The other topics around user management can be covered potentially in future presentations. So please reach out if there's something specific you would like to see. So also in this class, sorry, the wrong way. Also in this presentation, we plan to cover these components as they relate to this user security management process. We will show the InforOS components, such as Ming.le, which is where you see Infor Federated Security or the user management screen. We'll also look into Infor Ion, which is also part of InforOS. And the applications, global HR, and financials and supply management, which are part of the Landmark environment, and Birst. For some of the screens on this presentation, we are leaving out the ST Lawson environment, but that is to conserve time, but it also flows the same as the other ones. So to help describe how this process works, we want to run through a scenario. So if you're a user in the multi-tenant environment, you might be aware of the user management screen where an administrator maintains users and their security, but you might not understand how that security information gets from this screen to the different applications like Landmark for GHR and FSM and Birst. Today, we're going to explore how that data flows from one application to another and which components of the multi-tenant environment are utilized for that flow of data. In order to help illustrate this process, I'm going to use an example employee. Let's say Rob Tester is a user who needs employee access to GHR, payables manager access to FSM, and Birst reporting access. The administrator creates his security record in the user management on the user management screen with the employee ST role, the payables manager ST role, and the CSF Birst user role. How do those security roles get to the corresponding applications like Landmark for the employee role and payables role and Birst? Before I go too far down that path, let me show a little more information about the user management form displayed here in case you are not familiar with it. The user management form is a component of the IFS portion of Ming.le, which itself is part of InforOS. It is a web-based user interface used for maintaining users. To access the user management
They
screen,
sent the wrong link to everyone, so everyone was on the wrong call, and they just updated everyone. Why can't I hear them?
sorry, I had to get some feedback there. To access the user management screen, you need to select the user icon from anywhere in InforOS.
To unmute yourself, press.
So if you see here, this is where you would click this little person icon, and then if you have the correct security access, you would see the user management option here. When you click that, the main form pulls up that lists the users in IFS. From here, you can select the profile icon in front of the user you wish to review. This will pull up the details tab of that user profile. Some of the key values on this detail tab are the first name and last name and the email address, which is used for logging in for most environments, and the Landmark actor ID, which is used obviously on the actor record in Landmark for FSM and GHR. This IFS ION person ID is also an important field when creating the actor ID in Landmark, as well as the security record in Birst. This is a system generated record, so it's not something that you need to come up with. And another important tab on the user profile is the security roles tab. This is where you assign security roles to those users. So back to the previous slide. where the administrator assigned the GHR, FSM, and Birst security roles in user management. So how do these security roles get to the application they govern? Let's talk about the process that moves that data. The security data needs to flow from the user management form where it is entered to the application, to the applications such as Landmark or Birst. What transfers that data to the proper application? Well, Infor uses a product called ION to establish these security data flows. ION is used to manage the connectivity and communications between these applications. This product does not just handle the data flow of the user security. The ION application passes all kinds of data between the applications. For instance, replication set data from GHR to FSM that goes to data lake is also managed by ION, as well as application data from FSM to IDM. ION is where the administrator goes. ION is where the administrator goes to define data flows and connection points. You may ask yourself, what are data flows and connection points? Not familiar with those terms, really. Well, data flows define what data files move between which application. And a connection points are predefined application connectors that determine which files and applications can receive and send data. A different way to think about a connection point is maybe like a traffic cop, where it sits on the application and determines what files are allowed in and what files are allowed out. It controls the ION inputs and outputs to the application. So let's get back to our example. We added security roles for Rob Tester, and we need that security information to get to the right application. Using connection points, as you see here, each application has a point where data can flow in and out. These are connection points. And data flows. Those are the flows that pass the data between the applications. So where do we go to establish the flow of data to the correct application? We want to go to ION Desk. That is where we will define the connection points and the workflows. ION Desk is an application that is available in the application selector in InforOS. And of course, you have to have the correct security role assigned to you in order to see ION Desk. But this is what the icon looks like, and is usually available on one of the tabs if you have access. Once we open the ION Desk application, you can see where you go to define connection points and data flows. As you might be able to determine from this screen, you can do a lot more things from ION, but we're only covering what is needed for this process, the flow of data between user management and the applications for user security. And those topics are data flows and connection points. So the first thing we need to look at are connection points. When you select connection points, the main connection point screen pulls up. All the ones listed here came delivered with our Cloud Suite environment. And depending on what applications you're licensed for, you may have the same ones. There is a connection point for GHR data. There's one for FSM data. And I know from experience that instance 01 is for Ming.le IFS data, or the user management data that we're talking about in this example. If you notice here, it says social instance, and I think we all know Ming.le has a social collaborator tool, so that's where the name comes from. We also are concerned with Birst, so this is the one that's concerned with the Birst user security, as well as the Landmark for the Landmark security. This one's called LMRK-MT for Landmark Multi-Tenant. As you can see, there are others, but we won't go into those at this time. For the user security data file transfer, or data file / BODs, as Infor calls them, transfer, we are only interested in Ming.le Instance 01, Birst IMS, and Landmark. As stated before, connection points are what allows these ION data files or BODs to flow into and out of the application. Sorry, missed my little clicks. So we have 3 connection points defined that we will use for this example. We now need to confirm what each connection point is allowing in and out of the application. As I mentioned before, the connection point determines what files or BODs are allowed in and what files or BODs are allowed out. In order to check that, we need to open the connection point to ensure that we have told the application which files can come in and which files can come out. If you see here, received in application, and they're checked, these are coming in, sent from application, and this one's going out. And again, as a side note, as mentioned before, these connection points are needed for user management. As mentioned before, these connection points that are needed for the user management process come delivered with your multi-tenant environment. So as you can see in reviewing this connection point, which files are allowed in and which ones are coming out. For the user security data flow, we are only concerned with the sync security user master, which flows out, and the process security user master, which flows in. As you can see, there are other data files here, as mentioned before, and those are used in other flows that we won't be covering during this presentation. So this is what the Ming.le IFS connection point looks like. Let's move on to Birst and Landmark. For Birst, if you look at the connection point for Birst, you notice it allows a number of files or BODs into the application and out of the application, just like the previous one. For the user security flow, we are only concerned with the sync security user master. The other files or BODs are used in other data flows, and they won't be discussed today. And here is the Landmark one as well. The Landmark one only has 3, and all 3 of these are used in the security process. So we have the applications with the connection points defined. Now let's establish the data flows. Going back into ION, you probably recall from the previous screenshot, the data flow configuration is located on the ION menu. When selected, you will see the data flows that have been delivered or built for your environment. Depending on when your environment was provisioned, the data flows for user management may or may not have come delivered. Either way, it is the implementations team job to ensure that they have been set up correctly. So going back to the example that we discussed earlier, Rob Tester needs access to Birst and Landmark. So these security data files or BODs must flow from Ming.le IFS where they're entered to Birst and Landmark. So let's take a look at the Ming.le to Birst user master data flow first. While reviewing this flow, you might have noticed it has some similarities to another workflow tool, IPA, or Infor Process Automation. It has start and end, quote unquote, nodes. It has nodes for application connection points and mapping and other things as well. So in order to illustrate how this particular data flow works, I'm going to walk through how to build it. It's a relatively short process. When you go to create a new data flow, the application pulls up a blank canvas. we need to put in a title and a description for the flow. Since this is a workflow to send user security data files or BODs to IFS, from Ming.le IFS to Birst, we need to pull down an application connector and assign it to Ming.le IFS, where the user management record starts from. And then after that, we will pull down another application and put it after Ming.le for Birst. So once you pull down an application to the line, you need to define it. So we drag it down to the line. We need to give it a title and assign it to the Ming.le connection point. We do that by hitting plus. This will pull up a connection point box and list all the connection points that are available. As you remember earlier, for Ming.le IFS, instance 01 is the correct connection point. So we will select that. We will do the same for Birst. We will pull it down. We will call it Birst. We will hit the plus to add the connection, to add the actual application connection point. We will select Birst. Now we have our basic Ming.le to Birst flow built. We have a workflow that connects Ming.le IFS to Birst, but I have not told it which data files or BODs we want to send between the two. Right now, we just have 2 connection points. In order to do that, we need to select the little document between the 2 applications. This is where you indicate what data files or BODs will flow between Ming.le and Birst in this workflow. Next, you select the plus sign to add the documents. This will pull up a pick list of all the data files or BODs that the IFS Ming.le connection point allows out. We will select the one we know is needed for this process, which is the Sync Security User Master. And we will hit OK. We're all set. So we now have a completed workflow and are ready to go. All you have to do now is activate it. And we are off and running for the Birst security portion. The same thing goes for IFS Ming.le to Landmark. I'm not going to discuss this one in detail, but as you see here, it looks a little different than the other one we just did. That's because for Ming.le, data can flow from InforOS to Ming.le as well as from, Infor Ming.le IFS to Landmark actor records, and data can also flow from the Landmark actor records back to Ming.le. So it's a two-way street. So that's why it was built this way. Essentially, it's built the same way. You drop the applications down, you selected the documents. And we will activate this one as well. So as I mentioned, you repeated the same thing for the other ones. And if you look at the data flows, you will see the ones we need. Ming.le to Birst, and it's active. And Landmark IFS, which is also active. So now the user security data flows are set up and complete. We are now ready to update security and let the data flow. I'm going to give an example and run through the process so we can see the data flow from one to another. As you can see here, Rob Tester is a user that is in user management, but at this time does not have the security roles needed for GHR employee role, FSM payables role, nor Birst. If you look at Birst, there's no security record for him. And if you look at his actor record on Landmark, There's only a base security role. It doesn't give him the employee role. It doesn't give him the payables manager role. When we add the employee, we then add the employee ST GHR role to his user record. We add the payables manager FSM role to his user record. And for this example, we're just going to add the CSF Birst user role as well. Once you hit and click save, the application creates the user security file or BOD that ION is looking for. The flow will then grab that BOD and send it to the proper application based on the workflows that we just reviewed. So in this instance, we have two flows that we built, one from this screen from IFS to Birst and one from IFS to Landmark. So it will send a sync security user record from IFS to Birst, and Birst should see an update based off of this value. And Landmark should process that file and update based off of these two. So if we look at the actor record, you can now see the employee ST and the payables administrator roles are now there. As well, if you look at the Birst security record, now exists, and it did not exist earlier. So security was updated. Now, like I mentioned before, the data flows between IFS, Ming.le IFS and Landmark is a two-way street. It goes both ways. So not only do changes from IFS user management pass over to Landmark GHR, but the reverse happens, and changes in Landmark GHR and FSM go back to IFS user management. So as an example, we add a new role, absence admin ST, to the Rob Tester's actor record in Landmark. That flow behind the scenes will then pass that actor record back to IFS, where we now see the absence admin ST role on his IFS user management actor or user management record. So essentially that is the process. Hopefully I was able to lay out and show you how data flows from the user management screen over to the applications and the pieces that are needed behind the scenes to do that. I know it was a little high level, but I'm just trying to show kind of how the process works. So before I move on to troubleshooting, Jared, are there any questions or anything we need to address right now, or should we move on to troubleshooting, some troubleshooting screens?
Nothing in the chat so far. I think we're good to keep rolling.
Okay, all right. So moving on to troubleshooting screens, or troubleshooting, I wouldn't say techniques, but places to go for troubleshooting. So after you've made your security change in the user management form, or even on the InforOS Lawson form, the Landmark form, it's depending on the amount of traffic that's moving through ION, sometimes good to wait 5 or 10 minutes if you haven't seen anything, and up to 30 minutes for the InforOS Lawson product if you're running a hybrid environment. So if after that amount of time you don't see the change in all the places you expected, you can start looking around to see if there are any errors. The first place you can look, one of the first places you could look at is ION for the errors, or any processes that erred on the ION side. There are a few places to go to look at error BODs, or at least to get to the error BODs form. The first one is the ION desk home screen. From clicking this widget will take you to the error BODs screen. Another place you could go to is under Connect. There is an error BODs link. Either one of those places will then take you to the main error bod screen. As you can see from this form, you have the ability to search by date or the message ID, bot ID, many different things. But if it was something that ran today, I usually go with either sort descending, look at the bottom, or I'll update the date to shorten the window in case there are a lot of errors to sift through. When you double click the message, it pulls up more details on that message. From here, you could read the full error or reason or error message here, as well as you could read the original message. So one of these two things might give you some insight as to what happened. And if you're not able to decipher it from the error message or the original message and trying to figure out what it didn't, why I wasn't able to update, you can always create a ticket with Infor and they could help you sort out the problem. From this form, you could also resubmit this BOD just to see, or you've corrected the problem, you could resubmit the BOD, or you could resubmit it to see if it'll go through because maybe it was for something behind the scenes that didn't run. And if this error appears, if this error turns out to no longer be a problem or an issue, you could hit marked as handled as well. And it will remove it from the error BOD screen and it will no longer be considered an error. Another place you could go to review errors is on the landmark side. Obviously, this is for security issues that didn't get updated in landmark. From here, you'll need the Async administrator role, and this could be for both GHR and FSM. You would then go to the Async administrator role, and you go to the view the queues. Here, I filtered on Ion star box, which will pull up all the Ion in and out box queues. You can check to see if there are any failed. As you can see here, we didn't have any failed here. But if there was an issue with that process running and there was a failed, you could drill on that failed process and see why it failed. Another place to look in landmark is the Ion inbox and outbox. These are accessible by expanding Ion, and there's both the Ion inbox and the out queue. This will take you to the inbox form, or in this instance, the outbox requests. From here, you could filter through the tabs and see if there are any new or pending actions waiting to process, any failed that are waiting to process, any that are pending retries, or any that are canceled. This may be where your issue lies. You could also look at the ones that were sent in process as well. So I just reviewed a few places where you could look at errors. I may have rushed through this a little bit, but hopefully you got an idea of where to go in case you have an issue. So as for the presentation, if you have some detailed questions on errors or any other part of this presentation, please you can put your question in the chat, or you could reach out afterwards and we will also address it that way as well. So any questions? Jared, anything in the chat at this time?
Nothing new in the chat just yet.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll give it a few more seconds here. I think Luke's got a few slides to cover at the end, but if someone has a question, please either, like I said, update the chat or send us an email. But hopefully I was able to give everyone here kind of a understanding of how that process works behind the scenes. I know a lot of times it's a black box for people. Just kind of wanted to help clarify, kind of look under the covers on these Ion processes that people hear so much about. Okay. Luke, I think back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Great session and a lot of great questions in the chat there. So, Rob, Jared, thank you so much for presenting today, and thanks to all the attendees for joining us. Just a quick look at some of the upcoming sessions that we have for Informative Friday. Next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, we'll be discussing configurable homepages with employee space with Candace and Mona. The following Friday, April 22nd, is going to be preparing for finance and supply chain changes. And then the last Friday of April, we'll be discussing at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, the benefits of supplier portal. If any of the folks on the call today are interested in attending, you can visit our website or email Mulli.Velasco@balesllc.com. Also, mark your calendars. The next quarterly series will be in July, so make sure you follow our social media as well as LinkedIn to stay up to date on those sessions. And just as a closing thought, we wanted everyone to be aware that our Coffee with Consultants offering is still out there. If you have any questions about what you saw today or any questions related to the Infor products, please reach out to us via our website. We'll connect you with a consultant, and we'll spend about 30 minutes with you at no charge over coffee to your beverage of choice. They will answer any questions related to your Infor system. And that's all we have. If there's no other questions, I think we're good to go. Actually, I'm sorry.
There was one more question that just popped up in the chat.
Thanks,
Real
Kelly.
quick, I'm going to come back and show these slides. I didn't show them at the same time Luke was reading them. So I think as Luke mentioned, the 15th is one people were looking at. April 22nd, preparing for FSM changes. So that's there. And then again, the last one is April 29th, benefits of supplier portal. So I apologize for not flipping those at the time. I wanted to review those again.
And then,
Rob, there is just one question that came through. Question is, can you track non-erroring BODs for auditing? And I think the quick answer is you can, because I believe IonDesk is tracking every BOD everywhere. Is that right, Rob?
That is correct. And if you look at Ion here, I've just pulled it up here. If you search on your one view on Ion, there's one view. You can search in the last hour. You could search. These are all the BODs that are processed. So if I change this to the last 7 days, I'm not sure how many we have, but so there we go. So it goes through and there's a whole list of them here. So this will track all the BODs that are there. So
And I think
Rob.
it will track a lot of history. I don't know if there's any kind of auto purging parameters here built in, but my experience so far is that this has basically kept track of everything I've tried to look at.
And Robert, I think you had something as well.
Yeah, I was just going to add in, you can look for a specific user. So if you're trying to audit like one specific person, you can grab the GUID or that ID out of IFS, drop it in that third box, and it'll give you back the audit for just that one person for whatever time frame that you're designating. Use that in the past plenty of times to look at those BODs and what the data looked like as it was flowing through.
Cool. Thank you, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one last question that I don't quite think is the scope of this call, but I'm going to put it out there. For either of the Robs, maybe you've got some input from experience. Is there a way to find out who is currently logged into Infor multi-tenant? And I don't know of a way. Even with the kind of the more robust InforOS security layer. And that's not really visible from the BOD's perspective, which is why I think that's a little out of scope of this conversation. But Rob or Robert, anything from experience you can add to that?
I think when I've talked to clients about this in the past, there is you can look at when a ID has been logged in. So you can go back and pull some data from IFS on when they've logged into the system, but off the top of my head, I don't know of a report or a direct way to see a snapshot of who has like an active session at this moment in time. I will say IFS and these pieces are always evolving. So it's not to say that there's not something that hasn't been released recently or could be released in the near future, but I don't know of a way right this second.
Yep. Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, and I wanted to show kind of what Robert was talking about. I went to the user record for tester. If you take this ID here and you copy it and you move to Ion Desk, I'm going to change this to the last 7 days just to give us some more. And then you put the ID here. If you search, all the processes that I've run for that employee over the last 7 days will show up here. So again, this is a user record on the main details tab down to the IFS Ion person ID. You copy that and you could drop it right in here.
And then can you go back to that IFS record, Rob,
Sure.
that you were just on?
Mm-hmm.
If you hit that activity tab, the second to last one.
Yep, there we go.
So this gives you, the attempts that try to
Export
log
it.
in, when they've been successfully logged in, and you can export this. This is at a user level. I think the question was more revolved around, can I get a snapshot of all the people?
That's something we can look
sorry.
into. But yeah, I think it's available
Yeah.
to do that.
And just,
Look into
just
that.
for everybody, there is an update in the chat from Andrew Tarver that there is a homepage widget that looks like it leverages some Infor class that will give you an active session count. And I don't know that will give you names or users specifically, but might give you a very high level count that you may be able to use in conjunction with what Robert just showed us here.
There you go.
Kind of a better overall picture. I don't have experience with that widget in particular. That one's new to me, but something to look into for those folks who are interested in that question here.
Thanks, Andrew. Very good. Any other questions out there?
There was just another question about the recording, so I just wanted to jump in and let everybody know. Sorry for the confusion in the links for the meetings. So I will, if you're registered through Work Out Loud, or if you contacted me directly for a link, I will be sending you a copy of the slide deck along with the recording. And feel free to just email me, molly.velasco@balesllc.com, if you just want to make sure you're on that list or get on that list.
Everyone can see that email address. And that I also put that in the chat as well. Okay, I think I'd like to thank everyone for their time this afternoon. We're not quite to the end, but I'm not sure if there's anything else. We'll just stop it early.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for a good presentation.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.